Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
This is you without Collaborator. Invisible, just another seagull. And this is you with Collaborator. Get noticed in the AI era.
Online visibility is not luck, it's a strategy. Combine SEO, digital PR, and content distribution to grow. Visit adz.com to learn more.
Hello everyone. I hope everyone is well. Thank you very much for coming to this session. I hope everyone's had a lovely lunch and we're all feeling nice and refreshed. Today I'm going to be talking to you about hreflang. As Adette said, I work at an agency up in Leeds, and not to brag, but recently they've started putting me on some of the bigger international clients, which seems really glamorous when you first start doing it. But if there's one thing I've learned during my time, it's that actually, rather frustratingly, international... Ooh. I know the suspense is killing everyone. Here we go. International site structures are quite often built to support business operations rather than search, which is a little bit annoying for us as SEOs. Some cases, you might just have a load of translations, which are really nice, and all of the content is translated, and it's all on the exact same URL structure, and it's lovely. But in a lot of cases, if you start getting to the size of business where there are kind of multiple operations and multiple teams involved, you'll need site structures that reflect that. And as frustrating as it is, they kind of do need this, because we think about a traditional site structure. You have a user who lands on a web page, hopefully converts, fingers crossed, that's what we want, be that through kind of a purchase or a form submission. And then there's a team at the end who handle this request, be that packaging something up, or it's a customer service team, a client services team who get in touch with them. If we introduce multiple teams who operate separately across different regions, then actually they need their own conversion channels quite a lot of the time. The conversions might not even look the same. So you might have some sites where you can convert with the click of a button, and then on other variants of those sites, you need to convert with kind of a form submission and someone gets in touch. Which means you need different web pages to support that. Content needs to be different to explain to them the differences between what you're offering, but also you need different landing pages to enable them to have those conversions to get in touch with that team. And therefore, your users need to land on different pages. Now, we as SEOs quite often get involved in all stages of this, but this step here is what I'm going to be talking to you about today, because anyone who's ever dealt with international SEO before knows that it's quite easy for this to happen. For users to land on the wrong version of the site, on the wrong variant, and to end up going through a whole user journey process that isn't suitable for them. And they can drop off then at any of these points, and if they don't drop off, you've got a very frustrated team who don't really know what to do with them. So how do we do this? We do it with hreflang. So hreflang is an HTML element. It's an HTML attribute, and it specifies primarily the linguistic variants of a page, but it can also specify the regional variants. So it needs to go on every variant that you have of any page. So if you have like a French variant and an English variant, then on the English one, you need to say, this is the English one, this is the French one. And on the French one, you say, this is the English one, this is the French one, right? You're saying the same thing. This is what it looks like. If you are not a technical SEO, don't worry. We're not doing too much on HTML. But essentially, you say, there's an alternate link to this site. It's whatever variant it is. So in this case, I'm specifying that this is the English variant, and then you include the link to your site, which I've named all of my examples georgia.com because I'm really obsessed with myself. And the way that it works is that you can kind of get really specific, and then it will default down to kind of, if that condition is not matched, it will default down to kind of a more general one. So if a web crawler was crawling this page, for example, it might see ENGB, which is telling it that this is a UK variant in English. If it's thinking, well, I'm not looking for the UK, it'll default down to your generic English variant. And then if none of the language conditions are met, then you can and should include something called an X default. And that's like a catch-all, if nothing else, serve this version instead. There's just one problem. hreflang is really hard to implement because actually site structures aren't consistent. And so it's really easy to end up linking to pages that don't exist on other sites and creating new 404 pages. Maybe your internal, your kind of URL structure is not consistent and your devs are going to have to do loads of work to try and match those up across different sites. You might have one piece of content that covers 3 pages worth of content on another site. So it can be really difficult. Also, it's dying, maybe. There's kind of been a lot of conversation recently about whether we really need hreflang. As kind of Google did say to us, pop this on your websites, please, a few years ago, but there's been really low uptake. And so they've been hinting that they're looking into other avenues of automatic language detection. So do we need hreflang, Georgia? Because you've just said it's really hard and that Google might be looking into other avenues. Also, search engines, really smart now. So can't they just figure it out? Well, can you? Right, SEO, we are going to play a game, and you will have to talk back to me, so please partake. This is called What Would Brighton SEO Do? And I just want you to imagine for a moment that you are Google or a search engine of your choice. I'm going to give you kind of a web page and the language it's in, and I want you to shout back in what region you would serve it. They're all going to be called Georgia. So, georgia.co.uk. It's in British English. Where are you serving it? The UK. Woo. See, it's fine. It's easy. Georgia.com in American English. US. The US. Georgia.de, and it's in German. Germany, right? Easy. Oh, hang on. Georgia.com has got a DE subfolder, and that's also in German. Okay, well, maybe that's for like other German-speaking countries, right? So like Austria and Switzerland. We'll move on. Oh, hang on. Now we've got Georgia.us. And that's also in American English. But we already had that for the .com. Okay, well, maybe this is the American one, because that kind of has to be, right? And then .com is like other English-speaking countries? Maybe? Yeah? Except this actually was one of my clients. They weren't called Georgia because that would be insane. But they had a .com, a .co.uk, a .us, a what are we on? AU, and a .ca, all in English, along with 42 general domains. Bit of a nightmare, not gonna lie. And the context that I know, that I didn't tell you when we were doing that exercise, because I'm being sneaky, is that this Georgia.com site is actually just like a head office site. It's kind of top level information about the company. Yes, they have some information about their products on there, but for the most part, it's not designed to be accessed by users who want to convert. It's more for kind of businesses who want to invest, whatever. It's a bit of a brochure site. All of these other sites do serve their respective regions, but you didn't know that. Google also didn't know it. And so what happened when we were onboarding this client was that in the UK, where we were operating, the .com was ranking position 1 for all of their branded search. Like any product area plus the core brand, as well as their core brand terms, .com was ranking. And for a lot of their kind of key target keywords as well, the .com was outranking them. Because it had more backlinks, it had been around for a while. The .com was the .co.uk, sorry, was a relatively new acquisition. So in answer to the question, do we need hreflang and can't search engines just figure it out? Well, yeah, they can because they're really smart, but they're not mind readers because you guys are really smart and you're not mind readers and you didn't know where those pages were supposed to be served. So I had to give you that context, and hreflang is that context that we give to search engines. So if you were explaining that site to me and you had to give me any context about where certain pages should be served, then you need to make sure that you're giving that to your search engines as well. And also, hreflang, yes, it's technical. It's a component of technical SEO generally. But where it points is strategic, and it should align with your overall international strategy rather than just being something that you try and tick off. It's not a box to check off in a tech audit. It's something that really needs a lot of thought and consideration. And if you nail this, it'll be better for search, good for us because we hit our KPIs, right? We get to show them some nice graphs. Better for users because they're actually landing on a version of the site that they can convert on. And that in turn is better for business. So how do we get to this? Well, I'm going to tell you. Step one, as always my step one for anything, is to look at the data. Just figure out what is happening with your site now. Where are your users coming from? You can look at this in most analytics platforms. GA4 will show you. And have a think about why they're arriving there as well. So this site, for example, is taken from an EU site. I stripped out a couple of regions for ease, but taken from an EU site, and they had translated content on there. But we noticed that a huge chunk of the traffic was coming from the US. Now, there's a few reasons that could be happening. Maybe it's loads of VPNs, but what we realized when we dug into it was that actually a lot of people in the US were searching in Spanish and Portuguese because those translations were available on that site. And as a result, they were landing on the EU version of the site because there wasn't localized content on the US version. So that's an indication to us of a step that we then might want to take. We're not taking any steps yet. We're just getting a lay of the land. Also, take a look at what your other marketing channels are doing because they are quite privileged. They get to do loads of really specific targeting that we don't get to do in SEO. So look at where the rest of your users are coming from. Where is paid targeting? And if you're noticing huge underrepresentation or overrepresentation in your organic user base, then that's an indication that there is a disconnect somewhere. So this example of a North American site, for example, generally their users are coming from the US and Canada, a small slither coming from the UK, but that could be VPNs, that could be anything. And organically, we noticed that actually the UK is really overrepresented. So if there's a UK site, then maybe we want to be directing those users there instead. And Canada's really underrepresented. That was hard to say. So if we have like a French site or a kind of a site with French content on instead, we might want to look at that and see whether our Canadian users are coming in there instead, because we know that it's a multilingual nation. Treat yourself as a competitor. Whatever you use to do kind of competitor research, plug yourself in all of the different page variants and see where you're competing with yourself. In an ideal world, if you had content on a US site, a GB site, and an AU site, you'd want all that content, obviously, because we're really good at SEO, to be ranking position 1 in all of them. So if you notice something like this happening, where that content is cannibalizing or even outranking the kind of target content that you want to be ranking in that region, then that's a really clear indicator that this could be something you want to focus on, because all of that cannibalization is going to be bringing down the rank as duplicate content. It's bringing down the rank of the pages that you're actually focusing on. So you know what's happening. But before you rush off to do anything, speak to the teams involved. The teams, whether that's kind of you're working internally and you want to speak to delivery teams, or if you're working with a client, get in contact with their customer service teams. Because if something is going wrong with the site, I promise you, people will know about it. There will be people banging their head against the wall in logistics teams wondering how they're going to fulfill these orders. There will be people in customer service teams who are overwhelmed by the number of calls they're getting from people who can't find what they're looking for on the site. There will be sales teams who are kind of getting in touch with people who then aren't actually qualified leads because they're in the complete wrong region. So speak to those teams and they'll be able to give you some really good direction as to where to focus your efforts. And they can tell us 2 things. Number 1, where do we need to act? Show them that data and they might go, oh, that's a really big issue. That shouldn't be happening. We need to work on that. But they also might be able to say something that you haven't seen in your data, that they're getting lots of inquiries in from a certain area or about a certain project range that then you can look into in more depth. But also, they can tell you where to leave alone, because we're not trying to do any work that we don't have to be doing. If we show them a graph like this, yes, they might turn around and say, oh, those US users, yeah, anyone needs to be landing on the US side because they can't convert on this site. So yeah, we need to look at localizing that content. Or they might turn around and say, actually, it really doesn't matter, just so long as they can find content that's useful for them. Once they inquire, everything is kind of handled separately anyway. So it doesn't matter what site they come in through. If you get it right, you'll have happy teams. Look at all these smiley faces. This is what you want. Step 3, I appreciate I've just spoken to you for 15 minutes about this, but I would like to say don't overthink this. Don't overcomplicate it unless you have to. It's really easy, like you've figured it all out, you know where you want your content to be appearing, to then be really focused in on that. And so this example was from a client and they knew exactly what they were doing. They had these translations live and they'd specified 4 regions for their 4 translations. But they had that content on the site. And so why limit that to only 4 regions? In their case, it didn't actually even matter from a conversion channel perspective. Strip it back. If you have the translations, make the most of them. There aren't really many instances with hreflang where you would need to specify a language and a region unless you have multiple pages in the same language, because generally users can make use of the content that you have available, even if it is kind of intended for another region. And don't forget to add your X default, and that will just give a catch-all. There's a very clear version of the site or of the page that you'll say in, if in doubt, serve this one. And then at least there's always a version that's intended for them. Don't forget that the purpose of hreflang is to specify variants. Not every page will have one. Now, this can be a pain because it can create loads of 404 pages, but it also might give you some direction. You might only need to focus on kind of your top level pages that are about services, maybe homepage. You might be able to leave all of your blog content alone if that's really localized. How do you know where to look for those variants? Well, you look at the data and you speak to the team involved. Find out where they want you to focus your efforts. Therefore, be kind to yourself. Just do what you can, because don't forget that hreflang is really hard. We've been over this. Yeah, you remember this site at the beginning with 42 domains? I went to their developers and I said, we need hreflang on 42 different domains. And their developers said, no, we're not doing that. That's going to cost loads of money. We don't have that budget. So I went to the team that kind of paid the developers and I said, we need this. You know this is an issue. And they said, no, no, that's loads of money. And we don't know really if it will work because you're talking about hreflang. And I was like, OK, fine. So we settled on this. We did 11 home pages. We identified the areas that were causing an issue, particularly for the UK, because that was what I was interested in. But also where they said, no, these sites are really overlapping. They had a lot of issues in the Benelux region. We got it live on the home pages because they were the biggest areas that were being affected. And lo and behold, it worked. Their sessions increased. I got to show them nice graphs like this. But more importantly, the users who were landing on the site were actually going to the right place. So all of the inquiries that were coming through were of a much higher quality because they were genuinely intended for that region. And we had much happier teams who didn't have to spend all of their time chasing people or trying to get things communicated across to their colleagues in different regions and different time zones. So as a result, we actually got buy-in for a much larger project that then spanned all of the pages on the UK site, and we got in another kind of 10 domains. So that's a win for me. I'm happy with that. But, do what you can. If there's one thing with hreflang that I'd like you to take away from this talk, it's that whilst it is a technical aspect of international SEO, you have to think business first. Find out what the business needs and what the business is already doing, and then figure out how you can support it technically. Try not to run away with the tech before you really know what you're trying to address. Because don't forget, international site structures have to support business operations, not just search. Thank you very much.
Demand sphere. Limitless visual insights from the SERPs. Unlimited dashboards and users. Easy to use and easy to scale your growth to new levels.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.
You've got 2 blind spots, keyword rankings and LLM visibility. Now, most tools solve one, but AccuRanker solves both. See how at booth number 18.
Wait, do you want free ice cream, or do you want to know the latest in how search behavior is changing? If it's the latter, download Search Pulse by Reflect Digital. Get that now.